Welcome back to How to Cake It. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so bear with me. The Walking Dead premiere is a few days away and Halloween is around the corner, so I thought I've got to cake the ultimate brain cake. Brains. I suddenly feel really hungry. Who's this? I want to call him Kevin. Can we call him Kevin? The base of this human brain cake is red velvet cake batter that I poured into an 8-inch round bowl so that I can get that domed shape. But this whole day has been off for me because I forgot to turn my oven fan down to low. I left it on high. So all of the red velvet batter blew out of the pan and it looked so creepy. Once my cake is cooled, I just carved away all that extra batter that oozed out that looks really creepy. And then I turned my cake out of the bowl and began to carve. So I just sort of carved away the sides to get it a little bit thinner, and then I carved away just a little curve underneath the brain. And I carved out this little crease between the brain hemispheres. I'm really looking to just create a base shape for my brain because most of the shape and the detail is going to come from the fondant that I lay on afterward.
Once I'm happy with the basic shape of my brain cake, I spray it with simple syrup and give it a nice crumb coat with my Italian meringue buttercream.
And then I put my brain cake in the fridge to chill. Oh, guys, do I need to touch up my lipstick or something? I feel really dry. Now that my crumb coat is chilled, I'm gonna ice this cake one more time. I don't have to be as particular as I usually am. What I need is for the buttercream to help my fondant stick to my cake. My hair feels like frizzy or something. Is it frizzy? It's time to prepare my flesh-colored fondant. I actually pre-dyed some fondant with...
You like that? Keep going.
Okay. I used burgundy, golden yellow, and a little bit of black gel food coloring. I've got to roll my flesh-colored fondant into tubes so I can recreate this brainy pattern. I don't want my fondant to dry out, so I'm gonna roll a few tubes at a time, about 4 to 6 inches in length. I'm just picking balls of fondant off, rolling it into tubes, and then applying them to the brain and starting again. I'm doing this completely freehand. I don't think two brains look exactly alike, so I'm just gonna go for it. Always weird when you start something like this because you feel like you're not doing it right because you're looking at such a small piece. But the more I added, the more confident I got to keep going. Kevin, you look like an angry flamingo. What happened? Then I moved to the other hemisphere of the brain, working on the lower quadrant, and I covered that in tubes. And then I turned the whole brain cake upside down. It's really cool because, I lost my head. A brain doesn't really have any flat surfaces at all. So I didn't want my cake to look flat. I added some fondant tubes along the bottom all the way around. And then even at the front of the brain at the bottom, and that's how I began the top of the brain. When I covered the top of my brain, I really wanted to make sure to keep the definition between the two hemispheres. So I started by covering one hemisphere. And then when I worked on the other side, I really tried not to mimic the patterns that are right across from it because it's not perfectly symmetrical. I wanted to keep this definition clear, so I put a ruler in between so that when I added the fondant on the other side, it wouldn't touch and stick to the fondant I had already placed down. I'm really hungry.
Okay, let's just try and finish the interview.
I had to make the cerebellum.
Could you give a little bit more detail
Yes.
about that?
I used the rest of my flesh-colored fondant to create the cerebellum. I knew I wouldn't see the whole cerebellum because my brain is going to be sitting down. So I wanted to just recreate these sort of soft, rounded shapes you see here. So I rolled 2 balls of fondant and flattened them out a bit to fit under my brain. And then I used a tool from my medical kit rather than a sculpting tool, and I just made these lines, just like, you know, the cerebellum lines. When I'm happy with my cerebellum and it's looking cerebellum-y, I go ahead and place that down on my cake stand first. And then I'm gonna add a little more fondant for support before putting my brain cake on top. Time to get my brain cake in place. I carefully lift it up and make sure that the back of my brain is even with the cerebellum underneath. And I just lay it on carefully. This cake needs a few more details. I'm gonna use one of my trusted medical tools to further indent the little sort of curves and all the little corners and twirlies in the twirlies, you know, the brain twirlies. You know, I really should have learned my brain terminology before doing this video, but to be honest, Googling human brain just opens a whole bunch of doors. I really want this brain to look moist and fresh, like right out of a skull. I am gonna use some seedless raspberry jam, and what I'm gonna do is just brush it on all over my brain, getting into every little corner, every little nook and cranny, every curve, and especially dolloping a ton of jam in the middle between the 2 hemispheres. Guys, is there something on my neck? This cake looks like a brain. It's actually kind of scaring me, but it still looks delicious. Guys, I'm sorry, I feel really weird. I don't feel like myself. I've been starving for hours, right, Kevin? Hold on. Kevin, look what I got us. I'll see you next week on How to Cake It. Don't forget to subscribe. Have some. It's really good. Kevin, tell them how good this is. I have no idea what Kevin's been thinking. Kevin, can I have a co-star that talks?